Hello again and welcome to the last in our three-part series on how you can tell data-driven stories using Import.io. Leading on from our previous webinar, what we'll be looking at next is doing some food price comparison using a mix functionality, which Alex here is going to walk you through. This will allow you to do is query lots of sources at once and get real-time accurate data back, which you can analyse in your data set. I'm now going to hand you over to the expert again, who's going to show you how to do this. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much this time, Beatrice, for that lovely introduction. This is our final episode in this trilogy, and today we're going to be using the connector tool, and I'm going to show you how to do some simple price comparison analysis using the data set, using what's known as a mix. So to start with, we're going to make a connector to the Tesco website. Now, a connector uses page interactions such as a search, and will extract all of the resulting data, making it a very powerful tool. And I'll show you a really cool thing to do at the end of this episode. So as usual, we need to build the connector first. So we click on Let's Get Cracking, and we want to use the magnifying glass icon this time. Now again, this site doesn't require a login to get the data, and we're definitely there because we're going to be interacting with this search box up here. So we click on there. Now, those eagle-eye viewers of you will notice that this is the same sort of layout as when we recorded the authentication, i.e. the user name and password in the last episode. It uses the same sort of principle, but obviously we're not going to look at the username and password in this episode. We're just going to be recording a query. So we hit record, the page will refresh as usual, allowing us to record a query. So we're going to record the query onions and click search, and just as the authentication did, when you see the data you want to extract, click stop, as so. So now what we need to do is verify that the data is still in the browser. Obviously it is. Again, we don't need to enable JavaScript this bit, and we need to make this an input. So we need to label the input box. Now this is very important, and I need to speak to you about continuity. Because we're going to be combining lots and lots of connectors, we need to make sure that certain things are the same. We need to make sure that our search box is labeled the same, and we also need to make sure that our schema, i.e. column names, are exactly the same. Otherwise we'll end up with lots of columns and our data set will look very messy. So let's make this an input of search term with no spaces and click on done. So we've labeled the input box now, which is really good. Now take me to the next step. And as before, we had here had auto table extract. We can't really use that feature for this one, so instead we're going to be using a multiple search result page. You can see that there's some data which is the same down the page, hence why we use this particular page. Does it have a total results count? It does indeed. There's 759 different types of onions at Tesco, which I find very hard to believe, but they must love their onions. Now we need to test the connector. So let's add an example, and let's use onions again. Now, my hands are well and truly off of the laptop now, and this is where the magic happens. You will see that because it's recorded the playback, it will go and play back exactly the search and the page interactions. So it played back us typing the word onions, and it played back us hitting the search button. So does the page display the contain the data that you want? Yeah, it does. It's all there. So we click on yes. And now we need to train the rows. So as before, we can either use Import.io's Auto Row Suggest feature, like so, or we can click and drag the mouse. So we train the rows there, and then as usual, after a while, it picks up on the row training. So we'll click I've got all the rows, and now we need to add the column. So if you remember, the row defines where the data is, the column defines what the data is. Now it's very important here that we get the same schema as the other connectors I've made. So this first one is going to be called product name, and click on done, and they are obviously Tesco brown onions loose. Now occasionally you might need to train it on more than one, so it picks up the training, but after a while it should be fine. And I'll just do a few more. Again, this doesn't happen all the time, but occasionally you need to give it 5. Cool, let's add another column. Let's get the price, and as usual we're going to map it as a currency, and there's the price itself. and click on train. And finally, we're going to get the weight. And we're going to get this as text. And the weight is just here. And click on train. Cool. So I've got what I need. That's brilliant. We've got all of the data. That's really, really good. Let's just train the total results, which is 759. I'm still absolutely staggered by that. And now we need to train for the pagination. So you can see here that we've got page 1, 2, 3 through to 38. We need to train the connector to go through this pagination. And we do that simply by clicking on page 2. Once the page uploads, then the browser takes over. And you'll see in a minute how it does this. So now we're on page 2. We're just waiting for it to load up. So there you have it. We're on page 2 and it's found out where all of the rows were based on our old training, and it's even got our data for us. So we don't need to train it anymore, which is really, really good. So we'll click on I've got 19 rows and I've got what I need. 759 results is correct. And now we need to train it. So before I go on, it's worth noting now that if you have a single product page with a connector, you need to train it on 5 examples. If you have a multiple results page with a connector, you only need to train it on 2. So let's add an example, and let's add the example of apples. And press query. And again, I'm not touching the laptop here, and you will see it will go and play back our query. So it's typing in apples and clicking search, and bringing back all the resulting data. And there they are. And there's 1,014 different types of apple that you can buy at Tesco's. And again, it remembers where the rows were, and it remembers what data you wanted to get, more importantly. I've got what I need, and all of these results are correct. Now, we do need to train it on pagination again, so we'll click on page 2, and as before, it will go and load up the page and bring back the resulting data in the data set. So I've got all 19 rows, and I've got all of the data that I need. That is the correct number of total results, and I'm done creating tests because we've done our 2 examples. And now we can upload to import.io. So as usual, we'll name it as Tesco Connector and click on OK. Now again, it will analyze it, make sure that everything's okay. Again, with connectors, it sometimes takes a little bit longer than extractors, purely because there's more stuff involved with it, i.e. recording queries and training lots and lots of data. So we click on Show Me the Data, and as usual, this takes you back to the data set. Now, here's where the cool stuff happens. If I get rid of the second query box and we just have one, it'll be easier to demonstrate. So what we can do now is put any search term in here, and it will go back to the Tesco website and query it. And this is going to be particularly important in the next stage, the mix. So what we want to do is open a new tab and go to the splash page of the browser. What we're going to be doing now is combining 2 or more connectors. We're going to combine 2 connectors together so we can do some price comparison. We click on Create a Data Set and Add Data. Now we want to go down to here and press Create New Mix. Now, in the true webinar style, I have one that I made earlier. So if we pick data and use the GUID, which is the long code on the end, of this data set, which I made to Sainsbury's, we can pop that in a mix, use one selected, and if we get the one from Tesco as well, we put some more data in. Then we can query both of these connectors at once using this box here. And because we labeled it the same, i.e. search term, it's really, 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 really neat and tidy. You'll also observe that the column names are exactly the same, i.e. product name, price, and weight. So for instance, if product name in the Tesco connector was just called name, we'd have 2 columns, one for product name and one for name. Luckily, we don't have that because we're smart. So let's do a search term of bread and see what it pulls back. So now it's querying both of the connectors at once. And you can see that it has Sainsbury's German Brunswick ham slices and Hovis soft white medium bread. So it's done its job really nicely. You can see the data origin here, so what connector it came from, and you can also sort by price and weight. So the cheapest bread available is from Tesco's, and it's Tesco's Everyday Value Garlic Baguette. I think I'm going to have one for dinner tonight. B, it's back to you.
Right, thanks a lot for joining us over the last 3 webinars. We've really enjoyed having you. I'd like to thank Alex here for demoing the tool to you. If you have any questions at all about anything raised in this webinar, do get in touch with us. Until next time, happy data hunting. Bye for now.